Is this thing on? So, did Superman suck, or was it the bestest movie ever? Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. You can follow me on X, Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. On TikTok, which I am very different and out there on there, Mad Mickey's World, Snapchat, BMouth60, Mick, your host with the most. A very warm welcome to Monday's edition of the DCU Daily. And do I have a banger for you today? Because I have spoken to some test audiences from Superman. People who have seen the Superman movie in its current state. So let me tell you my process when I'm approached by people who claim they've seen a movie. I can't just talk to people who've told me this. I'm not going to accept what some Tom, Dick, or Harriet has told me about a movie. I have to verify they've actually seen the picture. When I do that, I don't just say, okay, I'll talk to you. I have to think about this because this is one of my most anticipated movies ever because I'm a Superman fan. I love Superman. I love DC. I want DC Studios and the DCU to be successful if it's good, and it deserves to be, because I want this to be good. I have my opinions. I agree with James Gunn here. I disagree with him there. I've seen some red flags. I've documented those red flags from my own point of view, but I don't want it to be bad. I don't want it to fail. I want it to be great. But we do live in a culture today because there's some people pulling for the DCU, there's some people pulling for Superman, and some people who want DCU, DC Studios, and Superman to suck. So, recently we've had Jeff Snyder on a couple of occasions saying, oh, I've heard some bad things about Superman from test audiences. I've heard some bad stuff. I've heard some good stuff. That's not what we're doing today. I'm not going to say to you, oh, I've spoken to test audiences and they've said it sucks or it's the bestest movie ever, because that's not what they relayed to me. It was once I verified who they were, and we spoke for a very, very long time because you want details. Once I decided I was going to speak to them, because that's, obviously now I know a lot more about this film than many of you, any of you out there. So that's a big decision as well, isn't it? But anyway, so we had long, detailed conversations about the film. I'm not going to spoil the picture for you. I'm going to tell you how they felt about the movie generally, because I don't think anyone watching wants to be spoiled. And even if you do, I don't think it's right for the most people out there who don't want to know what happens in this movie. We're here to talk about the quality or lack of quality of the movie. So one of the first things that was relayed to me was that Frank Grillo, who plays Rick Flag Sr. in this film, is outstanding. And the context of his role was very, very interesting emotionally. So people loved Frank as Rick Flag Sr. I can say that. Now, I said I'm not going to spoil the movie for you, but the context of this movie and the reason, one of the things I should relay, like the other DC metahumans in this movie, are not supposed to be cameos. They're not cameos. They're there to play a part in Superman's story. So James Gunn was being absolutely truthful when he said this. The idea of these metahumans is they're not really getting the hero game. They're not being very responsible with what they're doing, right? And the idea around this movie, which was relayed to me, is that Superman's legacy is what makes them finally understand how a hero conducts themselves. That's why the movie was going to be called Superman Legacy, because he is the adult in the room in this movie. He's the inspiration to these other metahumans. And that's what it's like in the comics, by the way. All the other heroes look up to Superman, look to Superman to be the adult in the room, to be the responsible one. So the test audiences I spoke to said to me that they liked Frank Grillo, they loved Frank Grillo, and they liked this element as well. They also enjoyed watching the metahumans, the other DC characters in this film. When I asked them, is this a good movie? What do you think of it? Are audiences going to enjoy it? Are they going to hate it? And they said, listen, if you like the way James Gunn makes movies, you're going to love this movie. If you hate the way James Gunn tells his stories, you're not going to like this movie. So they said to me that basically, they enjoyed watching it. It wasn't a terrible movie. They felt some things could have been done better, but they really liked other elements. They found it an emotional movie. They found it quite funny in places. They really enjoyed Otis and Miss Tessmacher, for example. So there was a balance. Our conversation was very balanced. Because as I say, when you hear from other people, I've heard it's good, I've heard it's bad, they're on a grift, right? They're on a grift. It's not, people, when people, these are people who are used to going to seeing test screenings. I've been to see, as you know, a few test screenings. And when you see these test screenings, it's not, I've never seen a test screening of a movie where I felt, oh, this is horrible, or this is the best thing ever. There's a balance to that conversation. My opinion, I don't agree with test screenings. I think the problem with movies today and why they end up so bad is because the more test screenings they have and the more feedback they get, the more they want to change the film. And it becomes a Frankenstein's monster. It's a bit like the new Snow White movie. If they just made the movie they wanted to make, if they kept Rachel Zegler quiet, right, and Gal Gadot wasn't playing propaganda movies, right, in LA, if they just made the movie they wanted to make, but not keep on talking about, oh yeah, there's no love story and all that, they probably would have made a lot more money than they actually are going to make, right? Financial disaster. But the thing is with James Gunn, he hasn't spoiled this movie. He's kept his cards close to his chest. We don't know what this movie is going to be. And so, yeah, I think there was a balanced conversation that we had about this movie. So they felt, as we heard from Jeff Snyder, that the balance of comedy and seriousness was a good balance, and it wasn't, too much comedy. And there is a through line here. They enjoyed the chemistry between Superman, Clark, and Lois, and it was very good. And they enjoyed the romantic storytelling, but there's complexity. There's quite a lot of complexity between Lois and Clark and Superman, because there's another element to this storyline that kind of makes it a bit more complex, makes that dynamic a bit more complex. There's something else thrown in there, right, which I'm not going to go into because it will spoil the movie. So I asked them, was the villain of the movie revealed to them, and what did they think about the villain of this movie? And they said, yes, it wasn't just, it wasn't just a villain for villain's sake. As I said, with Lois and Clark and Superman, there's complexity, and there's an incident in this film that fuels some anger towards Superman. And there is the question of Superman's patriotic loyalty in this movie. But ultimately, as we suspected, the story is about people not trusting Superman because he's doing good things. And why is he doing these nice things? What's in it for him? That kind of situation where people can't be nice these days, without people thinking you have an ulterior motive. And that's the direction that Gunn's going in. So, as I say, look, it'd be easy for me to say, oh, they said it sucked. They said it's the bestest movie ever. But I have balance to my conversations. And I'm sure there's some people who want me to say it's the greatest Superman film, it's the greatest film ever made. Or there's other people who want me to say it absolutely sucked. I can't tell you either thing. There's a balance to the conversations that I had with these people. And it was matter of fact conversations. I wanted as much information. I wanted to know the quality of the film, The storytelling, was it good? So I think, interestingly, they said to me that it does get a little bit controversial in places which may, actually upset some people. Now, I predicted this a long time ago. A lot of people just thought they were going to get a happy, clappy, brightly lit, comic book movie because James Gunn does put complexity, whatever you think of him, whatever I think of him, he does inject complexities into his storytelling. He did it very, very well in his Suicide Squad movie. We see, who's the villain? Who's actually the villain of the Suicide Squad? Is it the creature? Is it the people who are cruel to the creature? And what you see there is a conversation about what happens when there's animal cruelty and how an animal can just ferociously, act so wild if you treat an animal like a beast. That's the commentary of that movie. It's actually the humans that are the villains of the Suicide Squad. And so that's interesting as well. So I think I know the people who saw it, they thought it was a good movie. They enjoyed the narratives of the movie. They liked the comedy. They liked the emotional element. So I asked them, I said, do you think this is going to be, a movie that the public are going to love, that's going to bring in $800 to $1 billion? And they said to me, listen, we're not sure if this movie is going to be the movie that everyone wants it to be. One person said to me, this is not the movie people are expecting. Let me repeat that. It's not the movie you're expecting. Yes, there's comedy, but there's not lots and lots of comedy. That's what was relayed to me. But some of the issues, some of the commentaries in this movie may, cause people not to think that this is the movie that they wanted it to be. A lot of people want a simple Superman movie with no complexities. But as I've already explained, people think that James Gunn doesn't make complex movies, but he does. There's deep storytelling within James's movies. There always has been. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is a lot darker than people give it credit to be. And some of the people who don't like Guardians Volume 2 is because there's less comedy in it, and there is comedy in it, but there's a lot of commentary, and it is darker in that film. And I like a mixture of good, dark storytelling with a little bit of humour, a little bit of levity. It doesn't have to be one thing or the other. So, did I like what I was told about this movie? Personally, I like what they told me. I like the idea of, it being, trying to be complex, trying to tell a story. And another thing I was told, they really loved Jimmy Olsen. They really, really loved Jimmy. They said he felt like comic book Jimmy. And yes, he is Superman's best friend. Now, this is something I've been looking for a long time. A lot of people think Jimmy Olsen isn't an important character. This is a young boy who becomes friends with the greatest hero the world has ever seen. Imagine being that kid. Imagine being, someone who arrives at their first job and becomes pals with Superman. So everyone loved Jimmy Olsen. Now, I wasn't asked. Yes, I was asked. Let me start again. I was asked if I wanted to know about Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor, and I said yes. I will know everything about him because I love Lex Luthor as a character, especially since Michael Rosenbaum performed him so well in Smallville. They said to me, he's a mixture really of different versions. You see a little bit of Gene Hackman when he's with Otis and Miss Tessmacher. There's a little bit of Rosenbaum. There's even a little bit of Kevin Spacey. There's a little bit there. There's even a little bit of Jesse Eisenberg, I was told as well. So, very, very interesting. Like, one of them I spoke to kind of liked Lex, the other one didn't really like this version of Lex, and the other person I spoke to absolutely thought Nicholas Hoult nailed Lex Luthor. So there's a lot of details I've been given that I can't tell you about. this video isn't to spoil the film. I think what I took away from it and what you're probably taking from this video is that there's some really good storytelling, that it's a good, solid movie. But the question mark is, will it be a great movie? Will this be the movie that launches the DCU? From what I was told by these people, that's still a huge question mark.